The Midnight Visitor. Michael Harrison never believed in extraterrestrial life until the night one appeared in his bedroom. It wasn't the dramatic entrance he'd imagined from countless sci-fi movies, no blinding lights, no hovering spacecraft, just the soft creak of his apartment floorboards at 2 a.m. that prompted him to open his eyes. The figure stood motionless in the shadows, tall and slender, with skin that seemed to shimmer like liquid mercury under the faint streetlight filtering through his window. For a moment, Michael thought he was dreaming. Then the figure moved, and his heart nearly stopped. "Don't be afraid," the creature spoke, its voice melodic yet distinctly feminine, carrying an otherworldly resonance that made the hair on his neck stand up. But before Michael could respond, a sudden flash of red light from outside his window caused the being to drop to the floor and scramble under his bed with surprising speed. Michael sat frozen, his mind struggling to process what he'd just witnessed. The red light swept across his room again, accompanied by a low humming sound that seemed to vibrate through his bones. He could hear rapid breathing from under his bed, or whatever passed for breathing in an alien life form. "They're searching," the voice whispered from beneath his bed. "Please, help me." Those words snapped Michael out of his paralysis. He slid off the bed and crouched down, peering into the darkness underneath. Two luminescent eyes stared back at him, their irises swirling with patterns that reminded him of distant galaxies. "Who's searching?" he whispered back, surprised by how steady his voice sounded despite his racing heart. "The hunters," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. "They tracked me through the void between worlds. I didn't mean to involve your planet in this conflict." The humming outside intensified, and Michael could see multiple beams of red light now scanning the neighborhood. He made a split-second decision that would forever change his life. "Stay here," he said, standing up. "I'll check if they're close." He approached his window cautiously, keeping to the shadows. High above his street, he could make out several dark shapes moving silently through the night sky. They weren't like any aircraft he'd ever seen, their surfaces seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "What did you do?" Michael asked, returning to the bed. "Why are they after you?" There was a moment of silence before she responded. "My name is Lyra. I took something. Something that could change everything." She shifted slightly under the bed, and a soft blue glow emerged as she revealed a small object in her hand. It was roughly the size of a smartphone but seemed to pulse with an inner light, its surface covered in intricate patterns that moved and shifted like living things. "This device," Lyra continued, "it holds power beyond your comprehension. My people would use it to reshape worlds, to bend reality to their will. But they don't understand its true purpose." Michael sat cross-legged on the floor, his back against the wall. Outside, the humming had begun to fade, but he knew they weren't safe yet. "And you do? Understand its purpose, I mean?" "No," Lyra admitted. "But I know it wasn't meant for destruction. The ancients who created it, their technology was based on harmony, on balance. My people would corrupt that." The sound of police sirens in the distance made them both tense. Michael realized the hunter's presence hadn't gone unnoticed by local authorities. This situation was about to get much more complicated. "You can't stay under there forever," he said, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "And I have a feeling those hunters won't give up easily." Lyra slowly emerged from under the bed, her movements graceful despite the awkward space. Standing at full height, she was nearly 7 feet tall, her form both elegant and alien. Her skin continued to shimmer with that metallic quality, and her face, while humanoid, had features that seemed to shift subtly when he wasn't looking directly at them. "Why are you helping me?" she asked, her head tilting slightly in a gesture that seemed surprisingly human. "You have no reason to trust me." Michael considered the question. By all logic, he should be terrified. He should call the authorities, or run, or at the very least demand more answers. Instead, he found himself feeling something entirely different, curiosity, and an inexplicable desire to protect this strange being who had literally dropped into his life. "Maybe I'm tired of my life being so predictable," he said with a slight smile. "Or maybe I just have a thing for helping fugitive aliens with mysterious ancient artifacts." Lyra's expression shifted in what might have been confusion or amusement. It was hard to tell with her alien features. "You are strange, Michael Harrison. Says the alien hiding in my bedroom," he countered. "Look, if these hunters are as dangerous as you say, we need a plan. They'll come back, probably with reinforcements." Lyra nodded, her grip tightening on the device. "We must leave this place. The device, it needs to be taken somewhere safe. There are sanctuaries, places hidden between the spaces your kind knows about." "Right, because this night wasn't weird enough already," Michael muttered. He stood up and began pacing, his mind racing. "I have a car. It's not much, but it could get us out of the city. The question is, where do we go?" Before Lyra could answer, the device in her hands pulsed brightly, projecting what looked like a star map onto the wall. But these weren't any constellations Michael recognized. The points of light shifted and moved, forming patterns that seemed to point in a specific direction. "West," Lyra said, studying the projection. "The sanctuary lies to the west, hidden in what your people call the Rocky Mountains." Michael glanced at his watch, 3:15 a.m. The city would still be quiet for a few hours, giving them a chance to slip away unnoticed. He began grabbing essential items and shoving them into a backpack, clothes, his laptop, whatever cash he had on hand. "You'll need to blend in," he said, eyeing Lyra's metallic skin. "We can't exactly walk around with you looking like a living mercury thermometer." Lyra touched her skin, and to Michael's amazement, its appearance began to change, taking on a more human-like tone. Her height remained the same, but her more alien features became subtle enough that she might pass for human at a glance. "This is uncomfortable," she said, her voice strained. "But it will serve." Michael tossed her a hoodie and some sweatpants he'd outgrown. "Put these on. We'll need to stop somewhere and get you better clothes, but this will do for now." As Lyra changed, Michael peered out his window again. The searchlights had moved to another part of the city, but he could still feel a tension in the air, as if the night itself was holding its breath. "One more thing," he said, turning back to Lyra. "If we're going to do this, if I'm really going to help you, I need you to be honest with me. No more surprises. Deal?" Lyra finished pulling on the hoodie, which barely reached her midriff. Her luminescent eyes met his, and for a moment, Michael felt like he could see entire universes in their depths. "I will tell you what I can," she said carefully. "But there are things even I don't understand about this situation. The device, it shows me things, possibilities, paths that shouldn't exist. I'm not sure anyone fully comprehends what we're dealing with." Michael shouldered his backpack, trying to ignore the voice in his head screaming about how insane this all was. "Well, that's reassuring. Shall we?" They made their way quietly through the apartment building, taking the stairs instead of the elevator. Every shadow made them pause, every distant sound caused them to tense. But they reached the parking garage without incident. As Michael unlocked his aging Honda Civic, he caught Lyra staring at the sky through the garage's opening. The first hints of dawn were starting to lighten the eastern horizon, but the stars were still visible. Having second thoughts, he asked, opening the passenger door for her. Lyra clutched the device to her chest, its soft glow visible even through the hoodie. "Many. But not about trusting you." She folded her tall frame into the car with surprising grace. Michael got behind the wheel, started the engine, and took a deep breath. "Well, I guess we're really doing this. Any last words of wisdom before we embark on this crazy adventure?" Lyra's lips curved in what might have been a smile. "Only this, the path we're choosing, it will change everything. Are you ready for that?" Michael pulled out of the parking garage and onto the empty street, pointing the car west. "Honestly? No. But I have a feeling that's part of the adventure. As they drove through the sleeping city, neither of them noticed the shadow that detached itself from the garage wall, nor the signal it sent skyward. The hunt was about to begin in earnest. Trust and truth. Dawn painted the sky in shades of purple and orange as Michael's Honda cruised along the interstate, putting miles between them and the city. Lyra sat motionless in the passenger seat, her luminescent eyes fixed on the device in her lap. They hadn't spoken much since their escape, both lost in their own thoughts about the magnitude of what they'd undertaken. "You should sleep," Lyra said suddenly, breaking the silence. "Your species requires regular rest cycles." Michael smiled despite his exhaustion. "Thanks for the biology lesson, but I think I'll stay awake. Someone needs to watch for any more of your hunter friends." "They are not my friends," Lyra replied, her voice carrying an edge he hadn't heard before. "And they are not alone in their pursuit." Michael's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "What do you mean?" "Your government's observers," she said, gesturing to a black SUV that had been maintaining a consistent distance behind them for the past hour. "They detected the hunter's arrival. They will have questions about what brought them here." "Great," Michael muttered, checking his rearview mirror. "So we're being chased by both alien hunters and the men in black. This just keeps getting better." The device in Lyra's lap pulsed suddenly, casting a brief blue glow throughout the car's interior. She placed her hand over it, studying the shifting patterns on its surface with intense concentration. "It's becoming more active," she said, her voice tinged with concern. "The closer we get to the sanctuary, the more it awakens." Michael glanced at the device. "And that's a good thing, right? It's supposed to help us find this sanctuary of yours." "Yes, but..." Lyra hesitated, her alien features showing what might have been uncertainty. "The device's power draws attention. Like a beacon to those who can sense it. We must be careful." As if on cue, the black SUV behind them suddenly accelerated, closing the distance between them. Michael swore under his breath, checking his fuel gauge. They were running low, and they'd need to stop soon regardless of their pursuers. "We need a plan," he said, taking the next exit ramp. "We can't just keep driving and hope for the best." Lyra nodded, her gaze fixed on the device. "There is a place, the device shows me. An abandoned structure in the mountains ahead. We can rest there, and I can explain more." "Explain more?" Michael raised an eyebrow. "Like why your people want this device so badly? Or maybe why you really took it?" For a moment, Lyra was silent. When she spoke again, her voice was heavy with emotion. "My people, we were once peaceful. Explorers and scholars who sought to understand the universe's mysteries. But power corrupts, as your kind knows well. When we discovered the first ancient artifacts, everything changed." Michael navigated through a small town, taking random turns to lose their tail. "The ancients, you mentioned them before. Who were they?" "A civilization that existed long before either of our species," Lyra explained. "They achieved technological advancement beyond imagination, but they understood the importance of balance. Their devices, like this one, were created not to dominate, but to maintain harmony." "And your people want to use them as weapons," Michael guessed. "Some do," Lyra confirmed. "The hunters serve a faction that believes the artifacts should be used to establish our dominion over other worlds. They see Earth as..." She paused, seemingly searching for the right words, "a testing ground." Michael felt a chill run down his spine. "That's why you took it. To protect Earth." "To protect all worlds," Lyra corrected. "This device, it's different from the others we've found. More powerful. More alive. The hunters don't understand what they're dealing with. None of us do, really." The SUV had disappeared from their mirrors, but Michael didn't feel any safer. He pulled into a gas station on the outskirts of town, parking behind the building where they'd be hidden from the road. "We need supplies," he said, turning off the engine. "And you need better clothes. That hoodie isn't exactly inconspicuous." Lyra touched the fabric of the too small garment. "Your concern for my appearance is touching, but we have more pressing matters. The device, it's trying to show us something." She held out the artifact, its surface now covered in swirling patterns that seemed to move with purpose. The patterns coalesced into what looked like a map, but unlike any map Michael had ever seen. It showed layers upon layers of reality, places that existed between the spaces he knew. "The sanctuary," Lyra said, pointing to a spot where multiple layers seemed to intersect. "It's closer than I thought. But reaching it won't be easy." "Is anything about this situation easy?" Michael asked with a wry smile. Before Lyra could respond, the device's glow intensified, and both of them felt a sudden shift in the air pressure. Lyra's eyes widened in alarm. "They're coming," she whispered. "Both the hunters and your government's agents. They've tracked the device's energy signature." Michael quickly started the car. "What do we do?" "Head for the mountains," Lyra said, her voice firm. "The device will guide us, but we must hurry. The sanctuary's entrance won't remain accessible for long." As they pulled back onto the road, Michael noticed dark shapes moving against the morning sky. The hunters' ships, no longer bothering to hide their presence. Behind them, multiple black vehicles appeared, their windows tinted and their purpose clear. "Lyra," Michael said, his voice tense, "I need you to be straight with me. What happens if we don't make it to the sanctuary in time?" Lyra's grip on the device tightened. "Then both our worlds will suffer the consequences. The hunters will use this device to tear open the barriers between realities, creating pathways for invasion. Your world will be first, but not the last." Michael pressed down on the accelerator, pushing his old Honda to its limits. "Then I guess we better not fail." As they raced toward the mountains, the device's glow grew stronger, its patterns more complex. The hunt was intensifying, and their time was running out. But as Michael glanced at Lyra, seeing the determination in her alien features, he knew he'd made the right choice in helping her. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The fate of two worlds depended on it. The pursuit intensifies. The mountain road twisted treacherously before them as Michael's Honda struggled against the increasing elevation. Dark clouds had gathered overhead, unusual for this time of day, and the air felt charged with an unnatural energy. In the passenger seat, Lyra's skin had begun to shimmer more intensely, her human disguise flickering like a failing hologram. "You're losing control of your appearance," Michael said, navigating another sharp turn. "Is it the device?" Lyra nodded, her luminescent eyes fixed on the artifact which now pulsed with an almost blinding intensity. "It's responding to the sanctuary's proximity. The energy, it affects my ability to maintain this form." A deep rumble of thunder echoed through the mountains, but the sound wasn't quite right, too metallic, too deliberate. Michael checked his rearview mirror and caught glimpses of the hunter ships, no longer bothering to conceal themselves. They moved through the clouds like dark predators, their surfaces seeming to bend light around them. "Your friends are getting bolder," Michael observed, trying to keep his voice steady. "They grow desperate," Lyra replied. "They sense what I sense, the sanctuary's gateway is beginning to open. We must reach it before." She was cut off by a brilliant beam of energy that struck the road ahead of them, leaving a smoking crater. Michael swerved hard, the car's tires screaming in protest as they barely avoided the attack. Behind them, the convoy of government vehicles had also begun their ascent up the mountain. "Great," Michael muttered. "Caught between trigger-happy aliens and overzealous federal agents. Just how I wanted to spend my day." The device suddenly flared in Lyra's hands, projecting a complex pattern of light onto the windshield. The pattern shifted and coalesced into what looked like directions, not traditional road maps, but something more abstract, showing layers of reality overlapping with their own. There, Lyra pointed to a seemingly solid rock face ahead. The entrance lies within that formation. But we'll need to time this perfectly. Michael stared at the sheer cliff face. Please tell me you're not suggesting what I think you're suggesting. The sanctuary exists in a space between spaces, Lyra explained quickly. When the device's energy aligns with the gateway's frequency, the barrier between realities will become permeable, but only for a moment. Another energy beam struck nearby, closer this time. The hunter ships were descending, their massive forms casting dark shadows over the mountain road. Behind them, the government vehicles had split up, attempting to cut off possible escape routes. How long do we have? Michael asked, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Lyra studied the device's pulsing patterns. Minutes. Maybe less. The gateway's frequency is already beginning to. She never finished her sentence. A massive impact rocked the car as one of the hunter ships swooped low, creating a shockwave that nearly sent them careening off the road. Michael fought for control, the steering wheel bucking in his hands as their pursuers closed in from all sides. If we're going to do this, it has to be now. Lyra shouted, her alien features now fully visible as her disguise fell away completely. Michael saw the rock face approaching fast, too fast. Every instinct screamed at him to hit the brakes, to not drive headlong into solid stone. But as the device's light reached a blinding intensity, he saw it, a shimmer in the air, like heat waves rising from hot asphalt, but moving in impossible patterns. Hold on, he yelled, pressing the accelerator to the floor. Time seemed to slow as they approached the cliff. Michael could see the individual patterns in the rock, could feel the car's every vibration, could hear Lyra's breath catch in her throat. The device's light filled the car, wrapping around them like a cocoon of pure energy. And then, impact. But not the devastating crash Michael had expected. Instead, it felt like driving through a waterfall, if the water was made of static electricity and liquid light. Colors he had no names for flashed past the windows, and for a moment, he felt his entire body become something less than solid. They emerged into, somewhere else. The car skidded to a halt in a vast space that defied description. The walls, if they could be called that, seemed to be made of shifting geometric patterns that hurt his eyes if he looked at them too long. The floor was solid but seemed to ripple with each step. And the air itself felt thick with potential, as if reality here was more of a suggestion than a rule. The sanctuary's antechamber, Lyra breathed, her voice filled with wonder. We made it. But their relief was short-lived. Behind them, the gateway flickered, and through it came the first of their pursuers, a hunter ship, its dark form looking even more alien in this impossible space. More vehicles were visible through the rapidly closing portal, government SUVs, more hunter ships, all converging on their position. Please tell me there's a plan B, Michael said, putting the car in gear again. Because I don't think we can outrun them in here. Lyra's expression hardened as she raised the device. We don't need to outrun them. We just need to reach the sanctuary's core before they can stop us. The device, it knows the way. As if in response, the artifact's glow changed, becoming more focused, projecting a path through the shifting geometry of their surroundings. Michael nodded, his decision made before he even consciously thought about it. Then let's finish this, he said, and pressed the accelerator. They sped deeper into the impossible architecture of the sanctuary, their pursuers close behind, as the very fabric of reality seemed to bend around them. The hunt had reached its final phase, and the true test of their partnership was about to begin. Sanctuary secrets. The interior of the sanctuary defied every law of physics Michael thought he knew. Corridors twisted in impossible angles, rooms expanded into infinite space only to contract into intimate chambers, and everywhere the walls shimmered with that same otherworldly energy that pulsed from Lyra's device. Their pursuers' footsteps echoed through the geometric maze, sometimes seeming to come from all directions at once. We need to reach the core, Lyra said, her voice tight with urgency. The device grows stronger here, but so do they. As if to emphasize her point, an energy blast from one of the hunter's weapons struck a nearby wall, sending cascading ripples through the entire structure. The government agents had also entered the sanctuary, their shocked voices carrying through the impossible architecture. "And what exactly happens when we reach this core?" Michael asked, ducking behind a column that seemed to be made of solid light. "Because so far, every step of your plan has just led to more running and shooting." Lyra's luminescent eyes met his, and for the first time, he saw fear in their depths. "The device will show us. It speaks to me more clearly now. Shows me possibilities, paths that," she broke off suddenly, her expression changing to one of wonder. Oh. That's not the most reassuring response, Lyra." Before she could explain, the device pulsed with renewed intensity. The patterns of light it projected shifted and merged, forming a three-dimensional map of their surroundings. At its center, a point of brilliant energy pulsated like a heartbeat. "The core," Lyra breathed. "It's not just a place, it's alive." Michael peered at the holographic display. "Alive? Like, sentient?" "The ancients didn't build the sanctuaries," Lyra said, her voice filled with awe. "They grew them. Cultivated them from living energy. This place, it's not just a refuge, it's a guardian." Another blast rocked the sanctuary, closer this time. Through a nearby archway, Michael caught glimpses of the hunters, tall, armored figures whose movements were too fluid to be human. They were methodically sweeping through the sanctuary, their advanced technology helping them navigate the impossible space. "If this place is alive, why isn't it helping us?" Michael demanded. "Why let them in at all?" Lyra's expression hardened. "Because it's waiting. The device, the sanctuary, they're connected. Part of the same system. But something's missing. A key, a catalyst." Realization dawned on Michael's face. "Us. We're the missing piece." "Yes," Lyra nodded. "A partnership. Your kind and mine, working together. That's what the ancients intended. Not domination, not control, but cooperation." The sound of footsteps grew closer. Through another impossible angle, Michael saw the government agents advancing, their weapons drawn. They were being surrounded, pushed toward the core by both groups of pursuers. "So what do we do?" Michael asked, helping Lyra up as they prepared to move deeper into the sanctuary. "How do we activate this partnership?" Lyra's grip on the device tightened. "We trust. Completely. The device showed me glimpses, possibilities. But the choice must be mutual, willing. The sanctuary won't force anything upon us." They rounded a corner and found themselves in a vast chamber that seemed to stretch into infinity. At its center, a column of pure energy rose from floor to ceiling, pulsing with the same frequency as the device in Lyra's hands. The core. But they weren't alone. The hunters had anticipated their move, emerging from multiple entrances with weapons raised. The government agents weren't far behind, their voices echoing with commands to surrender. "Stop!" The lead hunter's voice boomed through the chamber, speaking in perfect English. "The artifact belongs to us. This sanctuary's power will serve our purpose." Lyra stepped forward, her alien features magnificent in the core's light. "You don't understand what you're dealing with. This place, this power, it was never meant for conquest." "Then you are as blind as the ancients were," the hunter replied. "Power exists to be used. To be controlled. Your idealism blinds you to the truth." Michael moved to stand beside Lyra, noting how the device's glow had begun to synchronize with the core's pulsing energy. "Maybe you're the blind ones," he said. "Ever think of that? So focused on control that you can't see what's right in front of you." The device suddenly flared, its light connecting with the core in a brilliant display. The sanctuary itself seemed to respond, its walls becoming more fluid, more alive. The hunters raised their weapons, and the government agents shouted warnings. "Last chance," Michael said, looking at Lyra. "You sure about this partnership thing?" Lyra's free hand found his, her alien fingers intertwining with his human ones. "Trust," she said simply. Together, they stepped toward the core, the device's energy wrapping around them like a protective cocoon. The hunters opened fire, their energy weapons converging on their position. But something extraordinary happened, the sanctuary responded. Waves of living energy erupted from the core, intercepting the attacks and absorbing them. The walls of the chamber began to pulse with increasing intensity, and Michael felt a strange sensation building in his chest, as if his very atoms were beginning to resonate with the sanctuary's power. "The choice," Lyra said, her voice carrying an otherworldly echo. "We make it now. Together." As their pursuers watched in astonishment, Michael and Lyra raised the device toward the core, its light becoming almost unbearable. In that moment, Michael understood what the ancients had known, that true power didn't come from control or domination, but from connection, from trust, from the willingness to reach across the vast distances between stars and species to join hands in common purpose. The sanctuary's response would change everything. The final choice. The sanctuary's core pulsed with blinding intensity as energy coursed through Michael and Lyra's joined hands. The device between them had become more than just an artifact, it was a bridge, connecting not just them but their entire species through this impossible moment in time. "This ends now," the lead hunter commanded, his weapon charging for another blast. "You cannot comprehend the powers you're meddling with." "No," Lyra responded, her voice carrying a new authority. "It is you who never understood. The ancients didn't leave us weapons, they left us a choice." The device's light merged completely with the core's energy, creating a sphere of pure radiance around them. Within it, Michael felt his consciousness expanding, touching something vast and ancient. Images flooded his mind, countless civilizations rising and falling, the ancients watching, learning, understanding that true power lay not in dominion over others but in the connections between all living things. "They're not just memories," Michael gasped, understanding flowing through him. "They're possibilities. Every choice, every path." "Yes," Lyra confirmed, her alien features softened by wonder. "The sanctuaries were built to show us these truths, to give us the chance to choose a different path. My people, we were meant to find Earth, to meet humanity, but not as conquerors." The government agents had lowered their weapons, awestruck by the display before them. Even some of the hunters seemed to hesitate, their certainty shaken by what they were witnessing. The device, the lead hunter spoke again, but his voice carried a note of uncertainty now. "Its power could elevate our species to godhood. Why sacrifice that potential for cooperation?" The energy sphere pulsed, and new visions filled the chamber. Everyone present, human and alien alike, saw glimpses of two possible futures. In one, the hunter's path of dominion led to endless conflict, worlds burned and civilizations shattered in an eternal cycle of violence. In the other, they saw something different, Earth and Lyra's people working together, sharing knowledge, reaching out to the stars not to conquer but to connect. "Because godhood isn't the answer," Michael said, understanding flowing through him. "The ancients learned that the hard way. Real power, lasting power, comes from bringing people together, not forcing them apart." The sanctuary's walls had become completely fluid now, alive with swirling patterns of energy. The core's light intensified, and Michael felt something building, a moment of choice, of transformation. "The sanctuary responds to truth," Lyra explained, her eyes meeting those of her fellow aliens. "It shows us what we could be, if we're brave enough to choose it. This device wasn't meant to be a weapon. It's a key, not to power, but to understanding." One of the younger hunters stepped forward, lowering his weapon. "The ancient texts, they spoke of a convergence. A time when different species would need to unite against a greater darkness. Because some threats can't be fought alone," Michael nodded, the sanctuary's knowledge flowing through him. The ancients saw it coming, challenges that no single species could overcome by themselves. More hunters began lowering their weapons. The government agents exchanged glances, decades of protocol warring with the undeniable truth before them. The lead hunter stood rigid, his weapon still raised, but doubt had crept into his posture. "The choice must be willing," Lyra said softly. "The sanctuary cannot force unity. It can only show us the way." The device pulsed one final time, and the core's energy reached its peak. In that moment, suspended between possibility and choice, Michael understood what needed to be done. He looked at Lyra, saw the same knowledge in her luminescent eyes. Together, they released the device. Instead of falling, it floated between them, its light merging completely with the core. The sanctuary responded, its living architecture resonating with power. But this wasn't the destructive force the hunters had sought, it was something else entirely. Waves of transformative energy pulsed outward, washing over everyone in the chamber. Where it touched, it left understanding, breaking down the barriers of fear and mistrust that had divided them. The hunters saw the futility of their path of conquest. The government agents recognized the possibility of peaceful first contact. And between all of them, bridges of comprehension began to form. The lead hunter finally lowered his weapon, his rigid posture softening. "The ancients, they wanted us to find each other. Not to fight, but to grow," Lyra finished. "To face the future together." The device, its purpose fulfilled, merged completely with the sanctuary's core. The chamber's light softened, becoming warm and welcoming rather than blinding. The impossible architecture settled into a more stable form, though no less wondrous. "So what happens now?" Michael asked, still holding Lyra's hand. She smiled, a genuine expression of hope that transcended her alien features. "Now we begin the real work. Building bridges, fostering understanding, preparing for the challenges ahead. The sanctuary will remain, a symbol of what's possible when different species choose to trust each other." The government agents had begun making calls, no doubt setting in motion changes that would reshape human understanding of their place in the universe. The hunters were conferring among themselves, their warlike postures replaced by something more contemplative. "You know," Michael said, looking around at the transformed chamber, "when you first hid under my bed, I never thought it would lead to this." Lyra's laugh was like chimes in the wind. "The best journeys often begin in unexpected places. Thank you, Michael Harrison, for choosing to trust an alien fugitive. Thank you for showing me that the universe is bigger and more wonderful than I imagined," he replied. As humans and aliens began to mingle, tentatively at first but with growing confidence, Michael and Lyra stood in the sanctuary's glow, witnesses to the beginning of a new chapter in both their species' histories. The path ahead would not be easy, trust rarely is, but they had taken the first steps together. And somewhere, in the vast reaches of space and time, the ancients' legacy lived on, waiting for other species to discover the simple truth that had eluded so many, that the greatest power in the universe lies not in dominion over others, but in the choice to reach across the stars and take someone's hand.